Hello and welcome to Star Citizen Sunday. This is a weekly show with me, Ryan, aka Sifu Messiah, where we cover everything that's happened on the RSI websites over the past week. So let's get on with it. So in this week's show, there is the 10 for the Chairman, and Around the Verse episode 18, there is a look into how ships are created, and REDACTED FPS Team take over the RSI website. So in usual fashion, kicking off this week, we have 10 for the Chairman, and usually I'll pick out the best ones, leave the chaff, things that aren't too good and not as interesting. But this week, I think I picked every single question because there were some excellent questions. Starting with question 1 was, can we see planet-side weather effects from space? And Chris Roberts says that he's not discussed it yet, and he did go off on a bit of a tangent about how it works. So if you're a techie kind of guy and you understand what he's talking about, look at that question, because a lot of it was about how, you know, the software they're using to create it and so forth. He did say that it's possible to do that, but he also mentioned that it's very impractical to ship out 8K textures for every planet-side location, as he did say there was thousands. So I mean, I think we only know of hundreds of planet-side planets. Apparently there are thousands. And in their sort of planet pipeline, to get a planet design look from space, he said it's going to be possible. So I expect it will be in there. Maybe not version 1, but I think planets like Terra or Earth, the big planets, the main ports, we will see, you know, the weather effects. And he did say that, you know, we'll see the day-night cycle. So if you approach a planet and it's nighttime, it'll be dark, or, you know, half and half. You'll see one half late, and it'll be as the cycle is going. So I assume it will be real time. And he did say that clouds can move. They already use that. They already have moving clouds. So I expect we will see this. It will look fantastic. You'll be able to recognise a planet just from what it looks like. So the next question was whether or not planet-side locations, environments will change as the prosperity changes. So if it's like poor and not much money in the economy in that planet, it'll be graffiti and there'll be vandals and there'll be all sorts of mess. And will it change to being wealthy as the economy boosts in that place? Chris Roberts says yes. They have this layering system where it uses sliders. When they talked about PBR textures, they showed how they can change an image of something, I suppose in real time, where over time it'll be like a kettle will be brand new and shiny, and then it'll go to being a bit scratched, then it'll get, I don't know, oxidized, and then it'll be ruined, you know, and damaged. Everything has these layers. So planet-side location, it'll start off, if it's a really poor place, it'll start off looking deserted, rough, you know, graffiti everywhere, smashed glass, and then eventually over time, if that economy changes and becomes a very wealthy place, it will become a wealthier looking space. There'll be graffiti will be removed, there'll be new objects there. So that's good, really immersive on that side. The next question after that, question 3, was, can missiles be guided manually? Chris Roberts says basically yes, there is a missile type that they already have that has the ability to be guided, and in capital ships or maybe larger ships like frigates, or I suppose even if you get the ability to have them on a constellation, you'll have certain stations where a person can sit and will fire that and guide it rather than being the pilot doing everything, you know. Capital ships will have stations for navigation, for communication. They'll have all these different spaces, so it's going to happen, basically. So the next question 4, was, what is the reason to land planet-side with your 85X, which is the 890 Jumps mini ship, which is a 2-man cruise ship, rather than the actual 890 itself? Well, obviously because your 890 will carry the cargo, whereas your smaller ship can't. Plus, everyone will be on board of the 890 Jump. And he also said, can it be jacked while you have left it there? And Chris Roberts explains that they haven't really thought it out yet. It's another mechanic they have to go into. He did say that if friends have still aboard the 890 and you've left with another person or whatever on your own to go planet-side, then yes, it can be attacked because it is still in an instance as people are there. So your friends will have to defend your ship using its own means. But he did say that most orbits of a planet will be safe areas, and I suppose if it's a planet with policing involved, they will help protect you. I suppose if you're in a pirate place, it's going to be open to attack. Now, he did mention a while ago that large ships won't land planet-side. He said that you'll have to sort of dock, I suppose, close to like a docking station and wait for a shuttle to take you planet-side, which I think is a nice touch, because if you have lots of little ships coming in, lots of big ships coming in and docking on this station, then there'll be a crowd of you, there'll be a few of you waiting for the shuttle and you'll go down together. I think that's a nice touch. I assume that would be what would happen in the real world, you know. You wouldn't all fly down to planet-side if your ship is huge, because it would just take too much effort and there would be take up too much room. we'll see. I mean, again, like he says, there's a lot to be fleshed out in this world, and that's one of them. So, after that was, will the mobi-glass have variants? For example, upgrades and options, etc. And yes, Chris Roberts says, think of it as a smartphone. Like he said before, think of it like his mobile phone. There will be different apps, which I suppose you don't all have to take. You can choose whether or not you have these apps. There'll be different manufacturers for them as well, apparently. And he did say that Squadron 42 will have like a militarian style mobi-glass, whereas the Persistent Universe will be like a full-featured one. And you can have different skins and so forth. So there'll be a lot of customizations just with your mobi-glass alone, which is excellent news. So question after that, I believe it's question 6, was if you die while in EVA, what happens to your ship? Which is an excellent question. I have thought that myself. And Chris's response to this is that if you die, your ship will stay in that instance. Like he says, instances will stay open for a while. So I suppose if no one enters that instance, it'll disappear and it'll go back to your hangar. But if people are still in that instance, you know, or if someone enters that instance before it's had time to disappear, then they could take it. What I think is going to happen with this game is life is precious, obviously. You know, you only have 9 lives for your character before you have to change characters and lose a lot of shit. So you've got to take it seriously in the sense that you don't want to go flying into battle every 2 minutes. Every time you're not going to respawn, fly into battle like COD and then respawn again and go zooming in again. You've got to take it carefully. So people can salvage your ship and you will just respawn planet side, and then obviously your insurance will claim that. And it's through this that he went on to about how, you know, with your ship persisting, you could have a friend nearby, or you could somehow have a distress signal that contacts a friend to come and rescue it. And he did say that this will play very much in the mechanic of the rescue and recovery. Although it's not worked out yet, he really wants that to be a part of the game, and he wants to encourage the rescue and recovery, so there might be rewards for people who do recover it rather than just salvage it and scrap it and so forth. So maybe there'll be a greater monetary reward if you salvage someone's ship, if you rescue it, take it back to planet side and then allow them to get it again so they don't have to claim on the insurance and so forth. Again, lots to be fleshed out, we don't know yet. So the question after that was, can repair bots take care of all damage, or will parts need to be, will they be beyond repair and need to be replaced? He says that repair bots will not take care of all damage. They will definitely need to be replaced. Repair bots tend to only just patch up things, like if you were out in space, in deep space, and you had lost, if you had a big hole in your wing or somewhere, like maybe your hull, you had to knock out your gravity or whatever it's called, and then repair it, patch it up, and then you can continue again, but you will still need to repair it. He did say, however, there will be a repair ship, as we know, called the Anvil Crucible. He says, while in space, if you find one, then you can get it completely repaired, rather than just patched. So repair bots will only do a certain amount of repairing, well, not repairing, patching. So after that was Squadron 42 mission lengths, and how long will each mission last? Now, when he spoke to Erin, he said that there was 50 missions, or close to, and that generally means 50 hours of gameplay. So each mission will generally be an hour long. He did say that the missions themselves will last about 30 minutes, as in you going out and doing something, but there's also landing, boarding, talking to people, and collecting stories and things. So there's going to be more to it than just flying around and doing stuff. And he says they are very involved missions. There'll be puzzles, there'll be FPS, there'll be going planet side, there'll even be stealth. So there's a lot to them. Although obviously you might just think, I just want to be flying around shooting shit. It's not going to just be that. You're going to have that, but also the story behind it will be played out like a real story, I suppose, like cinematically, but while talking to them and being able to move. So the next question is a very interesting question. Lots of MMOs, for example EVE, with single servers, see groups of players controlling games like the economy or certain areas of space completely, so you will not be able to pass through. So how will that accommodate to the lone miner in his freelancer or so forth? Chris Roberts says that the player base will only ever be 10% of the overall population. What I'm about to say could either be taken as a negative or a positive, depending on how you like to play your games. I am by the by, because I think my slider for PvP, PvE will be about 50-50. He did say that it will not affect an area as great as something like EVE will, because the greatest instance they'll have at the moment, or they're looking to have, is between 50 and 100 people in one instance. And so groups or organisations can only have a certain amount of population in one server, so they can't be 100% of that 10% in that server. They will only have so many spaces, because then other people will still need to be in there. So you can't dominate a full server with one group. It'll only be a percentage of that group. so it cannot be completely overrun. Now, I know like in EVE, if a planet system is held by a group, then nothing can be done, which again is quite true to life. There will be certain instances where you will come to a jump, I expect, and there'll be an organisation that are like, sorry, cannot pass, or pay me this much, or they'll just open fire, who knows, which is true to life. And if you go into a place like, if space was as it is in the persistent universe now, there will be pirates and people taking over jump points and, routes, but in the policed areas they'll be policed, whereas the non-policed areas, they'll have free run of the place. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but there will be areas for organisations to control, so they will have their own instances where they can go in and try and take over space stations, and then if you fly past, they might open fire or they might ask you to pay. It's just how it will work. But also you've got to think that it's like if you went into an asteroid field, or sorry, so let's say there's an asteroid field and it was full of people having a battle, and you were heading to that asteroid field, you might not enter that instance. You may be put into a completely different instance which is empty of people because there are too many people within that first instance. So again, it's either a bad thing or a good thing depending on who you are and how you play. So the final question was, will there be specific missions to being in prison? Will there be entire prison planets, or will there be prison space stations? And I remember a while ago, as soon as Chris Roberts mentioned something along the lines of, getting into a bar fight and getting put in prison, he sort of said that briefly, and I picked up on that and had a discussion with some people on a forum about it, and we thought it would be an excellent idea to have a prison. So, think like Riddick, that sort of the games and the films where you've got to go into a full prison. And Chris Roberts says his answer was that he spoke to Tony Zurevec, which is always a good thing, about making the planetside environments feel alive, feel real. And he did say, sort of, the way he explained it was that there will be a prison system. I didn't think it was a good way of it happening. I would prefer it to be very in-depth, like a full mechanic of their own. Now, I know they have a lot of things to do, and this is going to be a very waylaid sort of plan, but the way he explained it was, if you get captured, you will be in the prison cell of the ship, it'll fade to black within a few minutes, then you'll enter a prison, and then you have to break out. He did say that the breaking out will be easy. He said it's not going to be hard to try and get out of a prison, which I think is not a good thing. I think there should be a full prison mechanic where you have to, if you've just stolen something, or if you've just been in a bar fight, you have a short sentence. It doesn't have to be real to life, like months or years. It can just be a few minutes or an hour. We have to serve that time, and then maybe if you're a killer, if you're a murderer, then you have a longer sentence. The prison's got to reflect the crime. So if you've done something worse, if you don't want to go back to prison, then you'll stop doing it. Whereas, you can go into prison, you can visit people in the prison, or you can, go through the daily routines of the prison, having to walk around the yard, go for your food, and then you can plot a way to get out. But I don't think it should just be a simple, you're in prison, you find a way to break out, and then you're back in space again, because you're still a criminal. And I'm not going to play a criminal, but I may accidentally do something stupid, or get into a bar fight, and be put in prison. A lot has got to be fleshed out about this, and if it's going to happen, it's got to happen properly rather than just a little crappy thing. I mean, that's just my opinion. I really want to know what you guys think. Tell me what you think, if we should have this prison. If you think it's going to be boring sitting in prison, then fair enough, I agree, it will be, but that's the punishment. So tell me what you think. And anyway, that was it for the Temp of the Chairman, so we'll move on that. So, on Around the Verse this week, number 18, it was again Sandy and Ben hosting. I've just picked out the best bits, as I don't want to include everything because it's not all relevant. Started with James Pugh doing a 24-hour live stream, and it explains why every so often I'll have Twitch popping up on my iPad telling me that Star Citizen have gone wild, and then I look into it and it's I think it's Dota 2 he was playing when I looked. But he's doing this to help kids through the charity Extra Life, which is very good of James. Well done, mate. We went over to, I think it was the UK office, where the Idris Owners Club, which is brilliant, has given them some whiskey, and this is because they have completed the Idris. So we should be seeing some screenshots soon, Ben says. After that, they explain that PAX Australia is next week. If you're going to that, have the best of times. It looks like it's going to be exciting, but obviously if you're having to travel to that from anywhere else other than Australia, you're going to be a bit tired. So, news from around the verse. So starting module by module, starting with Arena Commander, the lobby design has been finalised and it will be implemented in version 1.0. New Horizon mode is getting new additions to it, like stands and spectators, which will be very cool. I mean, that'll be very immersive when you're racing there. Squadron 42, the AI is being plugged in, and Ben mentioned something called crab droids, which I assume will be those huge droids that you can control that walk like little spider things. So I think they're going to be AI controlled the majority of the time until you need to jump in one. Manual landings and medal systems are in test phase. So we know about the manual landings. It's all getting ready and being tested now. In the persistent universe, new buildings on Terra are being designed, and also the Terra NPCs are in concept phase. So Terra is going to be the next landing location we see. We've obviously seen ArcCorp, which was on the live stream that they did for CitizenCon. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out. I've got it on my, I'll link it to my YouTube. Ships. So the Carrack continues in concept phase. And apparently it will not be the next concept ship we see, but the one after that, so the next concept ship. Cutlass is back in white box review, and they're changing things thanks to the comment on the forums, because a lot of people said things were wrong. Apparently they're moving the docking ring to the aft, which if that was an issue with you, it's been answered. The Sucker Punch gun is finished its modelling now. Herald its concept is being reviewed as well, and apparently that's looking like a very cool ship, and it's going to be cheaper than other ships. And I've been really strict with not buying anything. I've stuck to just having an Aurora. I really want to buy other ships, but I feel like I can earn them in the game rather than pay money now. But to be honest, if something comes out and it's around the right price, I will probably buy it. After that, we met up with Will, and he was stood with Bad News Baron, who is a Twitcher person, not one with birds, but on Twitch. And apparently they had a little bit of a barney together in jest. And they're going to have a dogfight, and they had a dogfight, sorry, live on the 24th. I missed it. I hope you didn't miss it. I'll see if I can get any footage of that. So we went back to Bug Smashers, and this bug was the Mustang Omega, where when you tried to sit inside it, you would spawn outside the ship. Very unusual. If you're into that Bug Smashers things, go and check it out. He explains how he did it. None of it makes sense to me. So after that, James Pugh was with John Riggs, who is the rigger. And apparently the rigger is someone who sort of not animates, but connects the characters together to allow them to move. So a very important job, and I suppose it's not just the characters, there'll be other things like the arms for certain ships, like the salvaging ship and so forth. After that, there was the most valuable post with Will. This time it went to a bloke called Voon, who basically, he has crammed ships together, so mixed them together to create new ones, like the Cutlermancer, which is obviously the Cutlass and the Freelancer, and the Glavenger, which I don't need to explain it. Looking at these ships, they actually look pretty cool. They sound like they're going to be a joke, but they look amazing. When we get the modding tools, my man, you can get to work and create these ships for us all. So next up was James and Travis again for the part 2 of the ship pipeline interview, and apparently on Friday his report will come out and you can read it on the RSA website. So something else which I'll talk about later again is Redacted Takeover, which Redacted obviously we know are the team behind the FPS module, and they are preparing themselves for PAX Australia, which is when they're going to release this module for us all to see. To get everyone excited, which I must say I am very excited, they took over the RSI forums and Reddit and the Twitter account. So if you had a question, you could have asked them, and I'll pull up some questions if I can find any and just sort of see what was said. I had missed all this because I was too busy playing Kingdom Come, but there you go. But then we sort of spoke with a bloke from Redacted, which I think we all know now that they're called Ilphonic. And he just basically spoke about the getting ready for the PAX and what they're doing to get it all prepared and ready to go so that it works fine. If you're interested in that, see what he has to say. Nothing too detailed about what's happening or anything, it was just a brief chat really. Once we returned to Sandy and Ben, they mentioned it's going to be a shorter show next week due to PAX, which, I mean, it's better than not getting a show, because usually when they've got these events on they don't bother giving us one, but it's nice of them to put the time in, because I know Sandy says that she's having to fly there and it's a 15-hour flight. But most importantly after that was the sneak peek, and as you can see it looks like it's going to be ArcCorp, and some of the assets within ArcCorp, like the shops. The first thing we see is a bar. Got a little 890 jump model in there. It looks very suave, does this bar. And if you look at the armoury, you've got things like the FAMAS, like a Chinese bullpup style rifle, even like a Sten gun. I don't know if you can see that. Like a World War II variant, which I think if pirates had these Sten guns, that would look so cool. Imagine going up against someone with a Bren gun or a Sten gun, something like some sort of World War II gun. Also, there was like the classic Uzi, the AK-47 made an appearance, but the magazine was backwards, I suppose, just to make it look a little different. But there was a couple of futuristic ones. I don't know whether or not we'll see all of these weapons in there, or if they were just sort of placeholders. Because if you look in the distance, there was like a placeholder with different guns that weren't quite scaled right. But yeah, so that was it for Around the Verse. So let's move on to the next section. So, as mentioned earlier, there was an exciting little post on which was called REDACTED FPS Team RSI Takeover. And basically what this was that with the run-up to PAX, and we're going to get to see the first-person shooter module, or the first-person shooter aspects from REDACTED, they had a post on Reddit, they were on Twitter, they took over all the social networking of Robot Space Industries and was asked questions by the public. Some of the questions, I'll pick out some from the Reddit so far, was shipboarding. What have you all come up with for actually entering other ships, for example, cutting through hull, forcing hatches, shooting out the windows, etc. Ilphonic, which we know now are the REDACTED team, they say you can cut through the hull, you can sneak on board through many mischievous techniques, blasting hatches, etc. Entry points are carefully chosen, however. Essentially, there are vulnerable points on the ship sections, but windows will be generally extremely fortified. Another question was, will we be able to damage ship systems from the inside intentionally or non-intentionally? And absolutely was the answer. And they elaborated on how that would work. And they basically said, you know, there are various systems in a ship. There's gravity, power, oxygen, various hazards, your engine and shields, etc. And when you start playing with the power in the ship, for example, you can accidentally overload a system and have to run and fix it, like physically. Or you could accidentally, he says in converted commas, throw a grenade into an unprotected gravity generator. So some of the gadgets we get to play with in the FPS, there'll be holograms, claymores, or claymore-like objects, not claymores obviously, personal healing, drills for doors, vents, shields, grenades, tripwires. They'll expand on this. This is just a few examples. So another question was, what would the cover system be like for the first-person shooter? Is it going to be sticky and so forth? And they said it's going to be more of a free cover system like Far Cry 3. So you go up close to something, hide behind it. If you press your aim button, you'll lean out automatically. So another question, which is a very interesting question, is if an airlock is breached, will the vacuum in the ship be pulling unrestrained items out of the airlock, including players? And the FPS team say you better believe it. This introduces many mechanics. If an attacking team doesn't want to deal with them, you can also latch onto a ship and create a tunnel between your ship and the enemies, which will allow for a smooth transition, so you don't have to deal with that. Another question I've picked out is to do with the health mechanic, and how do they plan to use this? It's if a player is wounded, will they experience slower movement and greater weapon spray, etc. And they say that yes, absolutely, the limb damage will have severe impact on how the mechanic works. And it's specific limb damage as well, so if you get shot in the leg, you will move slowly. If you get shot in your left arm, you will not be able to throw with your left arm, or, you know, you'll have more of a sway. So yes, specific limb damage will affect the gameplay, which is excellent news. Something else small, going back to the last question, is will we be able to select our dominant hand, or will everyone be presumed as right-handed? And they say that you can actually select your dominant hand, which will have a direct input resulting from limb damage, which is a nice little touch. So the final question I've picked from the Reddit was, will the cybernetic arms that you can have as a replacement if you get one blown off from previous injuries affect ability during combat, whether adverse or favourable? FPS teams say they will certainly have some gains to them, but there'll also be risks as well, including EMP type weapons and radiation or laser weaponry. So having a robotic arm isn't always the best thing. So that wasn't all the questions. I mean, there was still Twitter and the Ask a Dev section, but that's all the questions I'm going to pick out for now. If you want to see them all, I'll put a link in the description of this video so you can check them all out. But it was nice of them to get in contact with us and let us speak to them, even if we don't know technically who they are. That was it for that one. So also this week we had a fan spotlight again, which was this time voice attack programs, which, don't know if you know about this yet, but where we've seen on YouTube some people who use their voices to command their ships, where you can ask it to deploy your shields to your rear, to your front. A very interesting idea, and I will definitely be using this when the final game comes out, or maybe up until that. I just need to know how to download them. Also, there is a new tracker, which is a guide to all the Bounty Hunters Guild news, which, if you are looking to be a bounty hunter, it's for you, this is. There was a post on PAX Australia with all the details you need to know, so if you're going, I suggest you read that and get all the details down. A new lore builder. Last week they asked us for different variations of guns, different types of guns, and so we get to see all the ideas that have been put forward. Also, an in-fiction sort of religion philosophy known as the Church of the Journey. Are you a journeyman? And finally, there was Travis Day's post about the ship pipeline, which is immense. There's lots of detail there. If you want to know about how the ships work, how they become hangar ready, read it. Very, very interesting. And it also shows you the current status of every ship and sort of what area of development it's in. So if there's a certain ship you're waiting for, have a look and it'll tell you. I'll put all the links in the description below so you can go to them directly. So that's it for this week. Thanks greatly for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment if you've got anything to say, and like it if you did. Join me again next week for another episode of Star Citizen Sunday, and I also intend to cover the PAX Australia completely, so stay tuned for that. I'll see you in the verse.